I'm so glad you are here. Can you hear me okay? I have a different headphones thing. I hope everyone's having a good night. Hi, Val. Turn off my monitor. Dang it. But I just wanted to make sure that my voice sounds okay. Hello, Pepper. How are you, my dear friend? Oops, gotta refresh that chat. What makes that little old ant move a rubber tree plant? Yes, he's got high hopes. He has high hopes. He has high apple pie in the sky hopes. So when you something, I don't know the name. I don't know the words to that song. I do like the Frank Sinatra version of that song though. So good evening. Well, you know, I saw a Twitter on the tweeters and it said, "Why isn't anyone reading this?" And I said, "That's a job for me to read this." So I actually created a cool new intro video. That's what I spent most of, well, not most of today. I shouldn't say that. I spent a little bit of time on that. And then I have a fun outro video too. Oh my God, so fun. And I thoroughly enjoyed and had no desire whatsoever to change the the um the misspellings of Lolo. I love them. I think they're stupid and I love them because I love stupid things. Anyway, I hope your evening's good. Today the sun came out in Los Angeles. It was quite a nice afternoon. And yeah, good times. But I've been busy preparing a lot of stuff tonight and getting trying to get my shit together, which is less easy than one might think. I know I can sound smart sometimes, but I can't, I don't have the same organizational skills that I once did. Let me put it that way. Anyway, enough about that. What I really brought you all here for, all 7 of you, was to listen to me read this frickin' Vanity, is it? No, New Yorker article. It's a perfect way to end your day, is a little New Yorker. New Yorker for your brain, little brain teaser. And so this is the article that I want to read. It is something that Gal Suburban shared on Twitter and would very much like people to read it. So she doesn't know I'm doing this. So I'm dedicating this to Gal. And I'm sure if she wants to listen to it, she can at some point or another. So I know, kids. It's a little bit of a nightmarish image, isn't it? I really apologize. I don't take any pleasure in setting you on a course to nightmares on Elm Street, but here we are. Here we are. A living nightmare, if you will. All right, this is the New Yorker. It's a great magazine. I was a subscriber once, but I never had time to read it. Matt Gaetz's chaos agenda. The Florida Republican is among, hi Muskie. The Florida Republican is among the most brazen and controversial figures in Donald Trump's GOP. He's also among the most influential. By Dexter Filkins, February 19th, 2024. Having gained notoriety from a sex scandal, Gaetz has also emerged as the embodiment of the populist wing of the GOP, molded in the image of his mentor, Trump. I don't know if his mentor is really Trump or Roger Stone, but I digress. All right, everyone, let me make this a little bigger so you can enjoy it on your own. And what I want you to do now is relax, take a break, and just sit back and listen. And I'll try and make this as gentle an experience as I possibly can. All right, here we go. Representative Matt Gaetz arrived at the White House in the last days of 2020 amid a gathering national crisis. President Donald Trump had lost his bid for re-election the previous month, and his allies were exploring strategies to keep him in office. Though only 38 years old, Gaetz, the scion of a political family in Florida's Panhandle, had become one of the Republican Party's most prominent and divisive figures. His dark hair styled in a kind of bouffant, his lips often curled in a wry smile, Gaetz bore a resemblance to Elvis Presley, or, in the description of a Florida friend, quote, either Beavis or Butthead. He was quick-witted and sometimes very funny, and he loved to taunt his enemies, who were numerous, especially in his own party. Quote, he's the most unpopular member of Congress, with the possible exception of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and he doesn't care, a fellow congressman told me. With a combination of charisma and gleeful shamelessness, Gaetz had come to embody the new Republican creed of doing whatever it took and laying waste to whatever it took to ensure that Donald Trump would survive and succeed. By the time of Gaetz's visit on December 21st, Trump's allies had already set in motion a deceptively simple mechanism to overturn his defeat. In 7 states where he had narrowly lost, they attempted to replace the delegates to the Electoral College with loyalists to Trump. The plan, which came to be known as the fake elector scheme, was unsuccessful and led to the indictment of several dozen people. Gaetz was more interested in exploiting technicalities. He joined a group of Republican hardliners in a meeting with Vice President Mike Pence to discuss using parliamentary rules to reject electors' votes, attempting to reverse an election that Gaetz described as, quote, uniquely polluted. Yes, by you. You just have the wrong polluter. You're so right, Jam. He's going to get it. He'll be his own undoing. But Gaetz, well, actually, he won't be his own undoing. Oh my goodness gracious. You know who's going to be his undoing. It's really going to be little Greenberg, little Jolie Greenberg. Hi, how are you? I just wanted to read this article from New Yorker because Gal wanted people to read it. So I thought maybe I'd just read it so that people, if they want to listen to it, they can listen to it. Okay, anyway. But Gaetz had another reason to be at the White House that day. In December and January, he tried repeatedly to persuade the Trump administration to grant him an unusual dispensation, a blanket pardon, which would cover any number of potential crimes. Quote, he wanted a pardon, as I recall, from the beginning of time up until that day for anything, Eric Hirschman, an attorney in the Trump White House, told the January 6th committee. Gaetz invoked Richard Nixon, whose successor had pardoned him for his involvement in the Watergate scandal. Hirschman found that even this ambitious comparison insufficient. Nixon's pardon was never nearly that broad, he said. It's not clear why Gaetz pressed for such extensive immunity, but he was clearly preoccupied with more than trying to overturn the election. Prosecutors in the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section were investigating him over allegations that he had helped transport a 17-year-old girl across state lines and had sex with her. It was a felony, and if Gaetz was convicted, he would likely be forced to resign and potentially sent to prison. Devin Murphy, who oversaw legislation in Gaetz's Washington office for more than 4 years, told me that Gaetz was so consumed by the investigation that he effectively stopped carrying out many of his official duties. Quote, he had withdrawn, he said. I was making all the decisions. Tom Jocelyn, a principal drafter of the January 6th committee's final report, believes that the investigation could be the reason Gaetz asked for a pardon. He may have been trying to head off the indictment. By then, the sex scandal had helped make Gaetz one of the most notorious members of Congress. Evidence suggested that he had spent time with a number of young women who advertised on a website that seemed to be a thinly veiled venue for prostitution. Gaetz, then a 3-term congressman with a reputation for a freewheeling private life, appeared to have the impulse control of a teenage boy. Cassidy Hutchinson, a young White House aide, wrote in her memoir that he made repeated passes at her. On a trip to Camp David in 2020, while she was meeting with the White House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, Gaetz came to the door and asked her to escort him to his cabin because he couldn't find it himself. Gaetz denies this. Even after Hutchinson pointed out that all the cabins were on the same circular drive and clearly numbered, Gaetz persisted until McCarthy shooed him away. "Get a life, Matt," he said, closing the door. During the January 6 riots, though, Gaetz found a different way to make the news. He was at the Capitol when protesters stormed the building, and he joined colleagues in Congress as they were led to a safe room. Quote, "A lot of the members thought they were going to die," a longtime House staffer told me. "They were calling their families to say goodbye." "On second thought, put the apple in front of your face and put the clothes back on." Oh, so droll. Humor. The New Yorker. Sorry. Once the rioters dispersed, the members filed into the chamber to cast ballots on the certification of the November election. Gaetz, along with 146 other Republicans, voted against it, but the majority of the House endorsed Biden's victory. Minutes after the members reconvened, Gaetz took to the podium and suggested that neither Trump nor his supporters were to blame for the day's events. He cited a story that had just appeared in the arch-conservative Washington Times about a facial recognition software company that claimed the rioters had been infiltrated by false flag agitators. Quote, "Some of the people who breached the Capitol today were not Trump supporters," Gaetz said. "They were masquerading as Trump supporters and in fact were members of the violent terrorist group Antifa." The story quickly disappeared from the Times website after the software company protested that it was false. In fact, the crowd that stormed the Capitol was overwhelmingly pro-Trump, which Gaetz had every reason to know. He was friendly with members of the Proud Boys, the hard-right gang that sent numerous people to Washington that day. He was in contact with Roger Stone, who had helped coordinate the movement to resist Trump's loss, and with Jacob Engels, a conservative journalist whom one observer described as Stone's surrogate son. The night before, Engels had attended a gathering of the demonstration's leaders at the Willard Hotel across from the White House. He wasn't at the protest itself. He drank so much that night that he slept through it. My alcoholism saved me," he told me. Engels has known Gaetz for some 15 years, since they met through the Florida Teenage Republicans, and speaks of him with a mix of admiration and resentment. "He's done very well." This is a quote. "Family money can give you a lot of license to not give a fuck." Gaetz's speech on the House floor was a remarkable performance. A protester had been fatally shot, Capitol police officers were wounded, and members of Congress had possibly been saved from disaster by the barricaded doors they had hidden behind. Still, in just minutes, Gaetz had deftly constructed an entirely different story. Last year, prosecutors from the Justice Department announced, without explanation, that they were ending their sex crimes investigation into Gaetz, but he still faced an inquiry from the House Ethics Committee, which could, if it determined that he violated its rules, lead to a vote on his expulsion. By then, Gaetz had emerged as the embodiment of the populist wing of the GOP, railing against the government, the establishment, and even the rule of law if that stood in the way of political objectives. Aggressively self-promoting and consummately skilled at social media, Gaetz seemed molded in the image of his mentor Trump. In a memoir, Firebrand, which is also the name of his stupid television show, he envisioned a dramatic trajectory for himself. Quote, "All political lives end in failure, in a sense, but some are spectacular. Better to be a spectacle than to end up having never said anything worth canceling because nobody was listening in the first place." Wow, that quote says a lot, I think. All political lives end in failure, in a sense, but some are spectacular. Better to be a spectacle than to end up having never said anything worth canceling because nobody was listening in the first place. Wow. Picture worth 1,000 words. In 7 years in Congress, Gaetz has helped make the institution even more dysfunctional than it already was, threatening to shut down the federal government and force a default on its debt. Gaetz is a paradox. He is determined to attack the modern democratic state, but harbors ambitions that only modern American politics can satisfy. He articulates an idea of the country that seems so negative, ridiculing his colleagues, trashing the welfare state, scorning embattled democracies abroad, that it is sometimes difficult to see what he stands for. And yet the more Gaetz tears down, the more his supporters love him. As his popularity grew, he seemed to be preparing an effort to succeed Ron DeSantis as Florida's governor. Some of his fellow elected officials wondered what he would do if he got the job. Gaetz has said privately that he dislikes being in Congress. A longtime friend of his family told me that he finds the hours too long and the work too frustrating. Gaetz denies this. Quote, being a member of Congress is hard, the friend said. You're flying from your district to Washington and back all the time. You're studying policy and you're raising money. Matt is too lazy for that. Many are left to puzzle over what Gaetz's ultimate political objective is beyond self-serving anarchy. Quote, Matt is very smart, even brilliant, and he can be very nice, a former elected official who knows him well told me. But when I see someone that intelligent aggravating the toxic divisions in this country, spreading mistrust in the institutions that are our foundations, it makes me wonder, where does it end? 4 months, as I reported this story, Gaetz refused to participate. Then, one day in January, my phone rang and he was on the other end. Quote, I would prefer not to have your attention, he told me. Still, after some conversation, he invited me to meet him after an event in Little Elm, Texas, where he was campaigning for another insurgent Republican. Gaetz has distinguished himself with flamboyant gestures. He once protested a COVID response bill by wearing a gas mask on the House floor. But when we sat down in the lounge of a Ramada across the street from his campaign event, he was studiously self-aware, eager to talk about parliamentary rules and political philosophy. Gaetz describes his ideology as a populist-flavored libertarianism, or a libertarian-flavored populism. At the event, he had enlivened his complaints about budget policy by proclaiming that it was the audience's destiny to rescue a diminished country. Afterward, a long line of admirers gathered for pictures, treating him more like a celebrity than a public servant. Quote, I think if you want to be a populist, it's sort of important to be popular, he told me. In 2020, Gaetz got engaged to Ginger Lucky, an executive at KPMG, an auditing and consulting firm. Lucky's brother, Palmer, is a tech developer who founded Oculus VR and sold it for more than $2 billion. The two eloped, but there was a wedding party where guests photographed a sign with light-up gold letters that read, Gaetz got lucky. Recently, she has joined Gaetz on the campaign trail for Trump. He also has an adopted son, Nestor, who was born in Cuba and is the younger brother of a previous girlfriend. After his mother died, Nestor, who was then 12, came to the U.S. to live with Gaetz, who was in his early 30s. Gaetz did not disclose Nestor's existence for years, and when the news came out, he said that he'd been trying to shield the boy from publicity. Quote, we share no blood, but he is my life, he wrote on a Twitter. In an interview with People, he added, I live for the values and principles that matter to my constituents and that I've been raised with. Oh, well. Ginger Lucky also fat-shamed Matt into losing weight, so if you haven't checked Ginger's timeline, she's real good at fat-shaming him, and I don't care what happens to him, actually. So there's that. Gaetz grew up in Niceville, Florida, in a family of unusual wealth and political influence. His grandfather, Jerry Gaetz, a former mayor of Rugby, North Dakota, campaign slogan, unbought, unbossed, unbowed, was famous for giving a speech to the state Republican Party in 1964, urging the election of Barry Goldwater for president, after which he walked into the crowd and collapsed of a fatal heart attack. Gaetz's father, Don, started out as a hospital administrator, then helped run a nonprofit that provided hospice care. In the 1980s, the industry was dominated by nonprofits, but Don Gaetz saw a way to use government power to create an advantage. He helped lobby the Florida legislature to impose a licensing code on hospice work, and then formed a for-profit company, giving him for several years a near monopoly in the state. Concerns about inferior service were set aside. Quote, the evidence is pretty clear that for for-profit hospice care, you have less credentialed staff, fewer doctor visits, and lower quality care, Sam Halabi, a professor at Georgetown, told me. But it's an incredibly lucrative business. Around the same time, Don was among the leaders of an effort in Washington to make hospice care reimbursable by Medicare, a vast source of revenue. His company grew rapidly, and in 2004, he and his partners sold it to ChemCorp, which also owns Roto-Rooter, for $400 million. The company was later sued for overcharging Medicare and settled for $75 million. Though some of the overboiling occurred while Don, wow, my mouth all of a sudden doesn't work. Let me take a little sip of soda. Hmm. Re-engineer the mouth. His company grew rapidly, and in 2004 he and his partners sold it to ChemCorp, which also owns Roto-Rooter, for $400 million. The company was later sued for overcharging Medicare and settled for $75 million. Though some of the overbilling occurred while Don was on the board of directors, he wasn't named in the suit and denied wrongdoing. A few years later, Don listed his net worth at $24 million. By then, he had moved on to a second career in politics. In 2000, he decided to run for superintendent of the Okaloosa County School District. He won that race and was subsequently elected to the Florida legislature, becoming Senate president in 2012. He built a reputation as an unflashy but formidable legislator. Quote, Don is one of the smartest people I know and good at the game, a Tallahassee lobbyist told me. He can be so kind and so ruthless. In 2017, when a $1.5 billion fund was set up to ameliorate the catastrophic damage from the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, Don was named to the board that decided how to direct the money. As a student at Niceville High School, Matt Gaetz excelled in debate, becoming the state champion in 2000. Quote, he was always winning an argument about something, a classmate told me. Offstage, he often projected an air of entitlement, boasting to peers that his family's vacation home down the coast was where The Truman Show was filmed. In his teens and 20s, Gaetz was cited by Florida police 8 times for speeding and once for driving drunk. In the latter case, he was pulled over in his father's BMW and refused to take a sobriety test. The police found an empty mouthwash bottle in the glove compartment, and an Okaloosa County deputy arrested him. Gaetz engaged a lawyer and contested the case, and the charges were dropped for lack of evidence. When the Tampa Bay Times asked to see video of the arrest, officials responded that it had been destroyed. Soon afterward, the deputy who arrested Gaetz was forced to resign on the ground that he had used excessive force with a civilian, among other infractions. At Florida State University, Gaetz majored in interdisciplinary sciences and took a class in state government with Brian Ballard, a prominent lobbyist in Tallahassee and Washington. Quote, he was smart as a whip and he did the work, Ballard told me. The two are now friends. Gaetz went on to law school at William & Mary and soon was given a position with State Senator Ray Sansom. But Sansom quickly transferred him to a campaign committee from which he was fired for allegedly not showing up. Gaetz denies this. Gaetz went into private practice representing citizens in disputes with local governments. In 2010, hi Michael. In 2010, though, he filed to run for the Florida House. The seat he was pursuing had belonged to Sansom, who had been indicted for corruption. The charges were later dropped. Gaetz raised nearly $500,000 for his campaign, far more than any other candidate. He finished first in a field of 5 primary challengers and then easily beat his Democratic rival. In the legislature, Gaetz's acquired nicknames, Daddy Gaetz and Baby Gaetz. But Matt distinguished himself as being well prepared and unusually adroit. He took a leading role in drafting legislation to legalize adoption by gay partners and supported measures to increase penalties for animal abuse and to strengthen child sex abuse laws. Interdisciplinary science, Republican colleagues recognized the easy facility that had made him a debate champion. They would often hand him a bill, give him a minute to read it, and then have him formulate an argument for or against. Ron Book, a longtime Tallahassee lobbyist, told me, quote, he's the kind of guy you want on your team. Gaetz built a theory that government was good in some cases, bad in others, particularly in the case of Washington, D.C. Quote, it's just so corrupt, he told me. That's my principal thesis. It's just broken. He blames the emphasis on fundraising and the lack of term limits which constrain legislators in Florida but not in D.C. Quote, when you have only a certain term of years before you have to leave, you're willing to take half a loaf, he said. Also, I learned that in a term limit system, you don't have to be there forever to get a substantial amount of power and influence. Soon after taking office, Gaetz helped draft legislation that legalized medical marijuana. His father, then the Senate president, supported the bill. Quote, Matt was a big-time proponent of marijuana and a big-time user, a former Republican official told me. The legislation permitted a limited number of vendors to sell marijuana. One license went to a company owned by the family of Halsey Beshears, a state congressman who was a friend of Gaetz's. Quote, the legislation was written more or less to ensure that one of the franchises was awarded to Beshears, a Florida lobbyist told me. Afterward, Beshears supplied Gaetz with thousands of dollars in campaign contributions. Why, that just seems illegal. Some of Gaetz's initiatives seemed calculated to attract publicity. He pushed a bill to hasten the execution of death row inmates and another to allow carrying guns in public, even in churches and schools. In 2013, during a debate over accepting federal funding to help secure health care for the poor, Gaetz reportedly expressed reluctance to aid single, childless adults because they were, quote, too busy playing Grand Theft Auto video game to get a job. 2 years later, when Democrats filed an emergency lawsuit to stop the Florida House from ending the legislative session over a stalemate on health care, Gaetz posted on Twitter, quote, this lawsuit reads like it was researched and drafted by Sen Joyner and spell-checked by Senator Bullard. Arthenia Joyner and Dwight Bullard are both black. The House leader apologized on Gaetz's behalf. Gaetz soon did the same. Quote, he's a typical child of rich parents, Max Stepanovich, a former chief of staff to the Republican Governor Bob Martinez, said. He's intelligent, entitled, irresponsible. He's accustomed to being the center of attention and insists on being the center of attention. A fellow lawmaker subsequently accused Gaetz of presiding over a game for House legislators in which each member would receive points on a sliding scale for having sex with, quote, aides, interns, lobbyists, and married legislators. Gaetz denied the accusation. Quote, Matt dated younger women and bragged about it, the Tallahassee lobbyist told me. He showed inappropriate pictures around the legislature. He acted like a 12-year-old boy. Okay. In 2016, Representative Jeff Miller announced that he would retire from his seat in Florida's 1st Congressional District. Gaetz, despite his reservations about national politics, decided to take his place. The Florida Panhandle, much of the South, was a reliably Democratic stronghold from the end of Reconstruction until the 1960s, when the party embraced civil rights legislation. In recent decades, the Panhandle has produced consistently conservative Republican congressmen. The most intense competition took place not in the general election, but in the Republican primary. One of Gaetz's main opponents in the primary was Chris Dosev, a combat veteran and father of 8 who advocated balanced budgets and a vigorous foreign policy. Quote, Gaetz called himself a conservative, he told me, but a conservative respects tradition and those who came before him. All Gaetz wanted to do was tear things down. As a candidate, Gaetz attached himself to Donald Trump, who was running for president. The previous year, both Gaetz and his father had endorsed Jeb Bush, the moderate former governor. But on the campaign trail, the younger Gaetz began to invoke Trump's themes: illegal immigration, Islamist terrorism, Second Amendment rights. He had the advantage of his family's name and local political network. A significant portion of his funding came from his own wealth and from his father's companies. Joseph said that these things, combined with the identification with Trump, made Gaetz all but unstoppable. Quote, I'd knock on someone's door and I would hear Fox News on the television. Fox was all about Trump and Gaetz was writing that. Gaetz won an easy victory and carried into office by the wave of frustration that brought Trump to the White House. But the relationship was not entirely one-sided. Gaetz had campaigned hard for Trump, securing, where did I go? Gaetz was helping to secure his big upset in Florida. We relied quite a lot on Matt, said Ballard, who was the finance chair for Trump's campaign in the state. Sorry, I read that wrong. In 2018, coasting to re-election, Gaetz made another shrewd political move, this one in the gubernatorial race. While most Republicans, we read about the 2018 race today, didn't we? Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you, Caroline. How sweet of you. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. I hope you can listen. I know it's late. I just saw this and I wanted to read it. Okay, where did I go? So silly. Okay, this is the one we read about today, the 2018 race, where Gal showed us some stuff. While most Republican leaders were lining up behind Adam Putnam, a reliable moderate who served as the state agriculture commissioner, Gaetz backed a relatively unknown congressman named Ron DeSantis. No one expected much of DeSantis, but Gaetz offered him a potent advantage. Quote, Matt orchestrated his introduction to Trump. Mark, the former Republican official told me. DeSantis would have never won without that. With Trump's endorsement, DeSantis shot past Putnam in the primary and won the election. Gaetz helped run DeSantis's transition, working to appoint loyalists throughout the bureaucracy. Quote, Matt had a huge influence on who was hired in the administration and also on policy, the former Republican official told me. He and Ron were very, very, very close. Gaetz's ascent looks certain. Quote, Matt has the winning formula, a former Florida official who knows Gaetz told me. He's a privileged son. He was handed a legislative seat and a congressional seat in a super protected Republican district and really doesn't have to do anything to stay there. The Florida novelist Carl Hiaasen, a former newspaper reporter who made a second career fictionalizing his state's excesses, once said, quote, the Florida in my novels is not as seedy as the real Florida. It's hard to stay ahead of the curve. The investigation that may force Gaetz out of office would be right at home in a Hiaasen novel, an only in Florida tale of local corruption, illicit sex, influence trading, and fraud. It might never have emerged if not for the concerned testimony of a high school band director in Florida. In October 2019, Brian Butte, who taught at Trinity Preparatory School, was summoned by his bosses and told that someone had sent a series of 9 letters accusing him of raping a male student. Butte, devastated by the allegation, feared that his career was over. Quote, there wasn't a shred of truth to any of it, he told me. Butte lived in nearby Chuluota in Seminole County. In the previous year, he had helped form a citizens group, Save Rural Seminole, to oppose a sprawling housing development that was proposed to be built on land set aside for farms and nature preserves. Some of the area's biggest developers and lobbyists were behind the project, called Rivercross. As the dispute spread, Rivercross also gained the support of Seminole County's elected tax collector, Joel Greenberg. Locals found it unusual for a tax collector, an ostensibly apolitical official, to take sides in a sensitive public controversy. But Greenberg had big ambitions and influential supporters. In 2016, when Trump had appeared at a campaign event in the small city of Sanford, Greenberg introduced him. In 2018, after months of petitioning by Save Rural Seminole, the county commission voted unanimously to reject Rivercross. The next year, Butte filed papers to challenge Greenberg in a coming election. Soon afterward, the mysterious letters arrived at Trinity Prep. Investigators were curious. The timing of the letters seemed fishy. What was more, someone had set up a fake Twitter account in Butte's name with posts trashing Jews and a vow to make Seminole County racially segregated. The investigators lifted fingerprints from DNA from the letters and found that they matched Greenberg's. As it happened, Greenberg was already under investigation for financial crimes. When police arrested him, they discovered several identification cards with his picture on them. Amy Tyler, an employee in Greenberg's office, told investigators that one weekend, a few months before, someone had tripped the office alarm. When she went to investigate, she found what appeared to be the expired state ID card scattered across a desk. Suspecting a burglary, she checked security footage from the weekend. The tape, she said, showed Greenberg at a desk sorting through IDs with another man. She texted Greenberg to inquire, and he replied that it was Matt Gaetz. Quote, I was showing Congressman Gaetz what our operation looked like, he wrote. Did I leave something on? Gaetz's congressional district and his home were some 400 miles from Seminole County, but he visited Greenberg repeatedly. They'd met in 2017 through a mutual friend and became close. The two often talked politics and sometimes mused about how Greenberg could get elected to Congress. At one point, they had dinner with Roger Stone, and the 3 men posed for a photo together. Investigators eventually determined that Greenberg had gone on a crime spree, beginning soon after he was elected. They charged him with a range of crimes that included identity theft, wire fraud, and embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars to use in cryptocurrency transactions. By the time the inquiry was finished, 9 people had been indicted for various political and financial crimes, including placing a ghost candidate on the ballot for the state legislature. Hi, Peace Love. Oh, I didn't message you. I'm sorry, Gal. I was so anxious to get reading this. I think I'm only halfway done though, Gal. I'm sorry. I'm terrible. I just got really excited. Hello, Gal. This is all your fault, by the way. This is dedicated to you. And it's your fault. Here we go. Greenberg, faced with decades in prison, agreed to cooperate with prosecutors as they looked into Gaetz. With his help, they began to unravel the story. In Seminole County, Greenberg and Gaetz hung out with a lobbyist named Chris Dorworth. who was also an investor in Rivercross. Dorworth had previously served in the state legislature and befriended Gaetz there. Three men spent time together in restaurants and at social events at Dorworth's home. Before Gaetz came to town, according to people close to the case, Greenberg often went to a website called Seeking Arrangement to procure women. Quote, Greenberg would set up girls and drugs, a lawyer with knowledge of the case told me. Gaetz disputes descriptions of his conduct and his relationship with Greenberg. The website evidently stopped short of outright prostitution. In a typical transaction, a man would make contact with one of the women on the site and negotiate a price, though what the price was for appears to have been left unsaid. In a letter to Roger Stone, Greenberg said that he would sometimes aid women financially and that the interactions typically led to sex. Quote, often it was a card payment, help with rent, a speeding ticket, or even a plane ticket home to see their family during a break. Stone denies receiving this letter. Documents record one of the exchanges involving Gaetz when Greenberg, in 2018, connected online with a woman from West Palm Beach who went by the pseudonym Priscilla. Greenberg, I have a friend flying in and we are trying to make plans for tonight. What are your plans for later? Priscilla, that's good. As of now, nothing planned. Greenberg, is such a good article. Greenberg, and how much of an allowance will you be requiring? If you have a friend that is down, perhaps all four of us can meet up later. Do you party at all? Oh, that's perfect. I don't even know how to do these voices. Oh, that's perfect. I have a friend who introduced me to the website that I could bring. She's very pretty, great personality. I usually do $400 per meet. So does your friend use the website as well? And yes, I do like to go out sometimes. Very cool. Yes, he understands the deal. What does your friend look like? $400 is not a problem. Are you both old enough to drink? She's 21 and I'm actually 20. Put 21 on the site for safety. But I do have an ID that I use. Oh, yuck. They exchanged photos and Priscilla proclaimed Greenberg very handsome. When she asked for a picture of his friend, a photo of Matt Gaetz appeared on her screen. Hi, Lipru. Greenberg told him, my friend thinks he's really cat. Well, he's down here for the day. We work hard and play hard. Have you ever tried Molly? Greenberg, that's a better voice, I think. Greenberg told investigators that he sometimes got Molly, the party drug, also known as ecstasy, and that he and Gaetz had sex with the women. There were multiple sex parties, the lawyer with the knowledge of the case told me. Sometimes the women were required to put their phones in a box. The liaisons on Seeking, whatever their legality, appeared to have been consensual. But then the investigators uncovered evidence that at least one of Greenberg's recruits was not an adult. According to Greenberg, he, Gaetz, and others had sex with a 17-year-old who had posted on the site claiming to be older. Quote, on more than one occasion, this underage individual was involved in sexual activity with several of the other females at the house, myself, and also the congressman from Florida's Panhandle, Greenberg wrote. I also made payments to several of the girls on behalf of the congressman. Gaetz has repeatedly denied that he had sex with an underage girl. That's called a child. Yeah. I have maintained my innocence, he told Tucker Carlson on Fox News in 2022. That was a quote. Quote, was an operation to destroy me. That was the best interview on Tucker Carlson. We should find that because I haven't watched that since it happened. But it was fantastic. Still, the revelations prompted the House Ethics Committee to launch its investigation. In 2020, yes, buy more drinks. A lot of it. Okay, so the problem, Lipru, actually, I did read this in an article. I don't know if it's in this one. Maybe it is, Gal. Is that I did hear that part of the reason that the case was so challenging to bring was because the girls didn't have memories of what happened to them. So, yeah, yep, he sure did. Okay. Let's see. How are we doing here? In 2020, the FBI seized Gaetz's phone. The evidence was highly suggestive. Venmo records showed that, in a single day, Gaetz had sent Greenberg $900 worth of payments, including one flagged with what was apparently a short version of the name of the girl who had recently turned 18. The next morning, Greenberg paid out $900 to the girl and two other women. Greenberg's attorney, Fritz Scheller, said in an interview on MSNBC, quote, there's a lot more witnesses than just the minor and Mr. Greenberg. Greenberg recalled that he discovered the girl had been a minor from an anonymous text message and that he and Gaetz were stunned by the news. Quote, she had a fake ID, her surrounding friends were all in college, and there was absolutely no way a reasonable person could tell that she was under the age of 18, he wrote, adding, "None of us would have ever engaged in any type of relationship with this individual had we known the truth." After that, Greenberg said, there was no further contact with the girl until she had turned 18. Her lawyer declined to comment. Under federal law, though the prohibition on adults having sex with minors entails what is known as strict liability. All that matters is the act. It doesn't matter if the perpetrator believed that the victim was an adult. Even as Gaetz proclaimed his innocence, he hired the attorneys Michael Mukasey, the former Attorney General, and Mark Furnich, who previously defended John A. Gotti. While Gaetz braced for the possibility of an indictment, Greenberg had already pled guilty. In late 2020, when Trump was still in office, Greenberg reached out to his friend Roger Stone and asked if he could beseech the president for a pardon on his behalf. Trump had already commuted Stone's sentence for obstructing a federal investigation. Stone thought that he could at a price. "Quote, your thing is being looked at," he texted Greenberg, who was ecstatic. "Thank you so much, Roger," he replied. "I pray that the Lord will help." "Today is the day," Stone later wrote. "I hope you are prepared to wire me $250,000 because I am feeling confident." I don't know how to do Roger Stone. Yeah. Stone denies offering a pardon, saying that the correspondence was incomplete and corrupted. Stone never came through, though. He told Greenberg that Patsy Baloney, the White House counsel, had shot down his request. In 2022, Greenberg was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. As it turned out, Gaetz did not require a pardon of his own. In February 2023, lawyers at the Justice Department informed him that they were closing their investigation. They didn't give a reason, but observers speculated that they'd concluded their main witness, Greenberg, a convicted felon eager to secure a lighter sentence, might not prove credible in a trial. The underage girl, now over 18, had become an adult film star with her own channel on Pornhub and a profile on OnlyFans. Well, that shouldn't mean fuck all, sir, but okay, I'm gonna ignore that for a minute. Jesus Christ. Observers of Florida politics say that Gaetz's constituents don't particularly care about the inquiry. Quote, Matt could be serving hard time for sex trafficking and he'd still get reelected, Stepanovich, the former chief of staff, told me. But, he added, that sense of assurance has inspired hubris. Gaetz had got out of so many jams since his youth in the Panhandle that he was certain he could get off again. Quote, if you're going to be a spoiled rich kid, it's better to be dumb, he said. Matt's trouble is he's a spoiled rich kid and he's smart, he's clever, and that's gotten him into all kinds of trouble. One Saturday morning last fall, at Calliope's Orchard Restaurant in Mineral, Virginia, I contributed $50 to Representative Bob Good's campaign so that I could watch Gaetz speak at a fundraiser on his behalf. Dressed in a black jacket and black pants, Gaetz looked more like a nightclub singer than an elected official, and he had a room full of voters rapt. He spoke of an America in decline, of runaway deficits that were sucking the life out of the country, of the dream of home ownership slipping away. Gaetz has the political gift of sounding completely sincere. He told the crowd that he and his small band of rebels were among the only members of Congress who were determined to cut spending and shrink the deficit. Quote, we believe that this system needs change, that sometimes you've got to send a shock to the system, Gaetz said to the audience, arrayed before him in plastic chairs. Quote, we can solve every other problem, but if our country continues to spend money like this, we will be the generation that presides over a managed American decline. Gaetz is part of a chorus of Republican politicians, including J.D. Vance and Carrie Lake, giving speeches on Trump's behalf. They all say more or less the same thing. The country's problems can be blamed on Washington and on the Democrats and their out-of-control spending. Never mind that Trump presided over an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, compared with about $6 trillion for Biden. Gaetz criticizes the influence of lobbyists, and in 2020 he announced that he would stop taking PAC money. Quote, I confessed my sins, he told me. He depends on his roadshow for funding. 80% of it comes from out of state, largely in small donations. Along with paying Gaetz's travel cost, his campaign spent millions of dollars last year buying potential out-of-state donors. In addition to his campaign events, Gaetz posts photos and videos on X, formerly Twitter, nearly every day and appears in such right-wing outlets as Steve Bannon's War Room, Sean Hannity's show on Fox News, and on Newsmax. Given their frequency, these videos and guest spots sometimes seem more important than the votes he casts. As he wrote in his memoir, quote, stagecraft is statecraft. Gaetz's speech on January 6 was a memorable demonstration of his stagecraft. But it wasn't the first time he had accused Democrats of stealing an election. In November 2018, two statewide races in Florida, for governor and for U.S. senator, were remarkably close. And Gal, we talked about the fact that we went over this today, thanks to you. So it's good stuff. Let's see, here we go. In November, Tuesday, the nominees, Ron DeSantis and Andrew Gillum in the governor's race, and Rick Scott and Bill Nelson for the Senate, didn't know who had won. Under Florida rules, both races were subject to mandatory recounts. During the proceedings, Gaetz met Jacob Engels, the columnist and confidant of Roger Stone, outside an office in Fort Lauderdale where poll workers were counting ballots. Standing on the back of a truck and speaking into a bullhorn, Gaetz led demonstrators in denouncing the recount. "Stop the steal," they chanted. He likened what was happening in Fort Lauderdale to the presidential election of 2000, when George W. Bush and Al Gore tangled for weeks after the voting was over. Quote, "For all I know, they're still counting ballots for Al Gore back there," Gaetz told the crowd. There was no evidence of fraud, but it didn't matter. Demonstrators blocked the doors to the election offices, and security had to be put in place for officials. Quote, "It was pretty rough trying to get inside," the then lawyer for the Florida Democratic Party told me. Both Republicans ultimately won their races, and the demonstration in Fort Lauderdale was mostly forgotten. But 3 years later, after the January 6 riot, federal prosecutors were intrigued by the similarities of the two Stop the Steal protests. Stone said that he attended neither, but some of his associates, including several leaders of the Proud Boys, went to both. Years before, Stone had led the so-called Brooks Brothers riot in Miami, when, during a tense recount for Bush and Gore, Republican protesters tried to rush to the doors of Miami-Dade Supervisor of Elections office. It was the first in a series of national and statewide elections in which Republicans protested results, accusing Democrats of fraud. Was that the war room? Oh, look at that. I didn't even know. Wow, it is his house. Huh. Well, there you go. The demonstration in Fort Lauderdale was emblematic of the kind of congressman Gaetz would be, showy, glib, and relentlessly antagonistic to institutional norms. He had a serious side, though. He seemed not especially eager to show it, and even his enemies conceded that he was smart. As a legislator, he worked to constrain government power. He pushed to end warrantless surveillance, to curtail the government's ability to seize individuals' property, and to loosen laws criminalizing marijuana distribution and possession. For the most part, though, his record in getting laws enacted is undistinguished. Quote, "Nobody's going to accuse me of passing too much legislation," he joked to me. His more prominent role is that of gadfly. He chides his fellow Republicans for insider trading and occasionally takes sides with progressives, particularly around environmental protections which have bipartisan support in his home state. During the Trump years, Gaetz helped end oil drilling off Florida's coast and spoke in favor of regulating polluters. Quote, "Conservative Inc., bought off as always, would have you believe it's in your best interest for chemical plants to pollute our rivers, agribusiness to clog our estuaries with their runoff, and coal plants to darken our skies." To Gaetz and his allies, his unpopularity in Congress is a measure of his principled approach. In their telling, a typical Republican member wins an election on a promise of reducing the federal deficit and shrinking the government, but once in Washington succumbs to pressures to conform. Quote, "It's so sad up here," Representative Eli Crane, a friend of Gaetz, told me. "Most of the members of Congress come here to be popular, and they ignore their base back home. They don't do what they were elected to do. Matt is very unpopular here, but it makes him popular back home, and he's popular because he actually listens to his base." Gaetz speaks of his district as a haven for like-minded people. "My community is very conservative. It's very homogeneous. He said, "It's actually where I'd like to spend all of my time." But he seldom seems to be there. In 4 months of reporting, I saw him speak in rural Virginia, New York City, and Dallas suburbs, and I just missed him in Montana and North Carolina. As far as I could tell, he did only 2 events in the Panhandle, a ceremony for military cadets and a rally for his campaign in the town of Navarre, at which he likened his obstructionism in the House to John Quincy Adams' unpopular stand against slavery. The old saw, quote, "all politics is local," is no longer true. These days, all politics, from a train derailment in Ohio to an argument about gender at a school board meeting in Florida, is national. Gaetz was elected to represent the people of Florida's 1st congressional district, but he understands that his stage is much larger than Pensacola, Crestview, or Fort Walton Beach. Quote, the number of nights that we spent in our own bed in Florida in the calendar year 2023 was in the teens, he told me. When he is criticized for not spending more time at home, he said, the way I explain that is that I am an expeditionary force. Nowhere did Gaetz's desires to shock the system to attract attention converge more dramatically than in his long feud with Representative Kevin McCarthy of California. In the 2022 election, the GOP took control of the House of Representatives, and McCarthy was poised to become Speaker. The Republicans' majority was thin, only 9 seats, but under normal circumstances, that would have been enough for him to secure the job. Yet McCarthy was precisely the kind of Republican whom Gaetz said that he'd come to Washington to fight, the kind who favored incremental progress, kept close ties with lobbyists, and feared dramatic change. In January 2023, as the 118th Congress took office, Gaetz led an effort to peel away 21 members from supporting McCarthy, depriving him of a majority. In taking on McCarthy, Gaetz was violating hallowed traditions. For most of American history, the longest-serving members of Congress were typically the most influential. From their posts as committee chairs, they guided decisions around how bills were drafted and brought to a vote. Junior members waited their turn and rarely criticized their party leaders. Gaetz portrayed McCarthy as little more than an apparatchik, hardly different from the corrupt Democrats who rose to power by securing campaign money for his colleagues. He told the House that McCarthy was, quote, the LeBron James of special interest fundraising. Jeering at a reference to McCarthy as selfless, he said, quote, selflessness is not selling shares of yourself to the lobby corps and then doing their bidding at the expense of the American people. His resistance was met with outrage. Quote, Matt Gaetz is a fraud, Nancy Mace of South Carolina said. Every time he voted against Kevin McCarthy last week, he sent out a fundraising email. Wow, what's her tape say? He and his allies insisted that Jim Jordan, the hard-right representative from Ohio, was a better candidate. Gaetz subjected McCarthy to a sustained public humiliation. 14 times McCarthy offered himself up for a vote, and 14 times, with Gaetz marshaling the dissidents, he failed. On the 14th attempt, McCarthy grew so angry that in view of television cameras, he strode up the aisle towards Gaetz, who was looking smugly implacable. Mike Rogers of Alabama, a McCarthy ally, surged at Gaetz and had to be physically restrained. One of my favorite pictures, by the way. Gaetz's professed goal was to force McCarthy to confront the huge deficits that have plagued federal budgets for the past 2 decades, particularly under the Trump and Biden administrations, which used borrowed money to stabilize the economy during the COVID-19 pandemic. Last year, federal borrowing represented more than 6% of the GDP, which, while not a record, was historically high for a country not in a major war. Although I would say a pandemic is still like a war, but anyway. By law, the president is required to propose a federal budget in February, giving Congress several months to debate its various parts, with deadlines along the way. In the past 30 years, though, as the parties have grown further apart, they have mostly failed to approve individual appropriations bills on time. Instead, congressional leaders have typically rolled over budgets and largely unchanged from previous years, discarding much of the debate on spending priorities. Gaetz and his allies claimed that they merely wanted to return to a normal budgeting process. Quote, I think that not passing single spending subject bills is chaos, he argued. We've been out of compliance with budget laws for most of my life. In the end, McCarthy managed to secure support for his candidacy, but Gaetz forced him to agree to make deep spending cuts in the next federal budget and to give any House member the right to call for a no-confidence vote. With the majority so thin, McCarthy effectively gave Gaetz the power to remove him. These conditions left almost no room to maneuver. On one side, McCarthy faced a Democratic White House and Senate. On the other were Gaetz's hardliners, who were insisting on severe cuts. Quote, when Kevin gave Matt the power to remove him, he gave him his life, the fellow congressman of Gaetz's I spoke to told me. The idea that you could give power to Matt and that he wouldn't use it. Boy, you don't understand Matt. Oh, God, there he is. Those poor folks. It didn't take long. In June, McCarthy struck a deal with the White House and the Senate, which continued high spending and lifted the government's borrowing ceiling. To do it, he'd had to secure both Republican and Democratic votes, a show of old-fashioned bipartisanship. To Gaetz, he had committed an unpardonable sin. Quote, it's going to be difficult for my Republican friends to keep calling President Biden feeble while he continues to take Speaker McCarthy's lunch money in every negotiation, he said. In September, McCarthy confronted Gaetz in a closed-door session and dared him to try removing him, snapping, quote, "File the fucking motion." Less than 3 weeks later, Gaetz gathered his allies and called for a vote. Many Republicans were furious at Gaetz. "I think he's a petulant child," Mike Lawler of New York said at the time. "He doesn't care about governing, he cares about getting attention." Meanwhile, House Democrats were only too happy to watch Republicans assail one another. "Do we side with a sociopath or an incompetent?" Mark Pocan, a Democrat from Wisconsin, mused. Gaetz's calculus was audacious. He had only a handful of Republican allies, but he gambled that he wouldn't need more than that, because Democrats, angry that McCarthy had endorsed an impeachment inquiry against Biden, would agree to oust him. Gaetz was right. McCarthy became the first House Speaker in history to be removed before his term expired. Some of Gaetz's peers believed that he had pulled off an astonishing feat. Quote, "He single-handedly toppled the Speaker of the House," David Jolly, a former Republican congressman from Florida, told me. "For someone to be able to do that within 6 years shows incredible gravitas." But, for the most part, his actions left intense bitterness. Not a few Republicans pointed out that he had relied on the opposing party to drive a wedge into his own. Quote, "Does someone want to tell Matt Gaetz that he worked with radical Democrats like AOC, Ilhan, and Rashida Tlaib to remove Speaker McCarthy, a Republican speaker?" Lala wrote on Twitter, X. The episode left many Republican members feeling that their party was captive to people with motives they could hardly comprehend. Quote, "Matt actually thrives on the hatred," Representative Garrett Graves, an ally of McCarthy's, told me. "I pray for him. I truly believe that he had a tough childhood, because there is no one that can have that mindset and be that maniacal and mentally healthy." And be mentally healthy. Oh dear. McCarthy, and that's one of his callings. McCarthy's ouster threw the House into chaos. Several members stepped forward to run for Speaker, only to back out when they determined that they couldn't win. Jim Jordan, Gaetz's favored candidate, made his own failed attempt. For 3 weeks, the legislature was effectively incapacitated at a time when the United States was involved in 2 overseas wars. Finally, Republicans came together around Mike's Little Johnson, a deeply conservative member with support among evangelical Christians. Oh, no, he's a fucking nut job. He's a holy roller nut job. Okay. Within days of taking over, Johnson realized that he faced the same circumstances McCarthy had. Congress needed to approve yet another temporary budget to avert a shutdown. So, like his predecessor, Gal is dropping the links. Please make sure you're looking at Gal's links. Thanks. Gaetz voted against this compromise, but neither he nor the other hardliners tried to remove Johnson, even though the budget that he shepherded through represented essentially the same level of spending, $1.6 trillion, as the one approved under McCarthy. Quote, "After all that, what did we get?" Graves said. "We lost time, we lost credibility, and we ended up with a deficit larger than before." As much as Gaetz talked about balancing the budget, he never laid out a detailed plan to do it. Like most Congress members, he takes pride in securing federal funds for his district, especially for the many military bases in Northwest Florida. Roughly 85% of the budget is military spending and entitlements, which neither Gaetz nor his colleagues seem willing to cut. Quote, "I'm realistic about the political circumstances," he told me. "If you started with the prospect that you were going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid all at once, it would be politically doomed to fail." Nor did Gaetz present a definite vision of how the House should be reformed. Quote, "Matt didn't have a plan beyond taking down McCarthy. He didn't know who was going to come after," the former Republican official told me. "He thought he'd shake up the system, cause some chaos, and in the meantime get on TV for a lot." Yet Gaetz's maneuvering made him a star. During his months-long feud with McCarthy, he raised $1.8 million for his campaign, positioning himself as a bulwark against Washington's elite. "If you want to drain the swamp, you cannot put the biggest alligator in charge of the exercise," he wrote in a fundraising letter. Some veterans on Capitol Hill believed that Gaetz's motives were even more cynical. He was carrying out a personal vendetta connected to the sex trafficking allegations. According to people around McCarthy, Gaetz made it known that he expected McCarthy to kill the House Ethics Committee investigation. McCarthy refused, saying publicly that he had no legal authority to do so. Gaetz insisted that he had never asked him. Quote, "It was all about vengeance," a person close to McCarthy told me. On February 6, Mike Johnson oversaw what was widely viewed as a devastating defeat. In a single day, his divided party failed to pass 2 measures that prominent Republicans had urgently endorsed. the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, Biden's Homeland Security Secretary, and a bill to provide Israel with additional military aid. A bill that made assistance for Ukraine contingent on increased spending for border security had died the day before. The conservative establishment was outraged. The Wall Street Journal editorial board, which has taken to calling Gaetz's crew the Chaos Caucus, derided, quote, the war of all against all that has followed its coup against Kevin McCarthy, and declared that the revolution is eating its own. When I raised the Journal editor's comments with Gaetz, he seemed amused. Quote, when I threw out McCarthy, it was the first regime change they've ever opposed. For him, voting down the spending bill was a victory. When Mitch McConnell builds it, it usually becomes a law, and for the first time in 7 years, we blew it up and stopped it. Between campaign events, Gaetz has been working, so who's testing the fences now? Between campaign events, Gaetz has been working to remake his party, supporting candidates he likes and attacking those he doesn't, and sometimes just making trouble. On the night that the votes failed, he went to online to offer an evidently sarcastic endorsement of Kevin McCarthy as the new head of the Republican National Committee, praising him as a very high-revenue fundraiser. Not long before, Gaetz had appeared with Trump in the ballroom of Cipriani Wall Street for the annual gala of the New York Young Republican Club. We watched that. The attendees constituted a taxonomy of MAGA influence, the old guard stalwarts, Julie Rudiani and Steve Bannon, America First cheerleaders like J.D. Vance, and newer faces such as the lawyer, maybe former lawyer, Alina Habba, who has represented Trump against a series of accusations of fiscal and sexual impropriety, and Rogan O'Handley, an online personality who helped popularize the boycott of Bud Light's trans-inclusive advertising. Dressed in tuxedos and bodycon dresses, downing Bellinis, they projected an image of a party, or at least a faction, confident in its own ascent. Threads on threads and threads, threads and threads and threads, 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 threads. You can't follow her. Well, you can, actually. You can follow her. She's in many places. Here we go. All right, here we go. Where was I now? The crowd cheered when Trump ambled onto the stage, but as he began to speak, he seemed tired, slurring his words. Against President Biden's frailty, it's easy to forget that the anointed Republican nominee, obese at 77, is also perilously old for the job. Trump rallied enough to promise the crowd that he would bring back the country from hell and to repeat his infamous comment of being a dictator on day one. Still, the real energy was provided by Gaetz, bouncing, beaming, almost conspicuously young, as he told the room that Trump was the greatest president America had ever had. He mocked leftists who, quote, see that the thought of greatness and consider Lizzo a sex symbol, she is, and said that most Republicans had been derelict in their duty. His wife, Ginger, in a sequined evening dress, sang the national anthem with unusual facility. Really? She used to volunteer as a piano and voice teacher. I remember hearing her sing it. I don't think it was that good. If Trump wasn't exactly passing the torch to Gaetz, it seemed clear that the torch was his to take. After that, wherever Trump went on the campaign trail, Gaetz followed with a galvanizing stump speech. He was less sycophantic than such MAGA endorsers as Carrie Lake, Tim Scott, and Vivek Ramaswamy. He looked more like a charismatic version of Don Jr. with a stronger chin. Almost everywhere, Gaetz was met by adoring crowds. Like Trump, he occasionally had to confront detractors. Quote, what's the youngest schoolgirl you've been with? A heckler called out in New Hampshire. Unfazed, he riffed on Vice President Kamala Harris's incompetence and moved on to his own remarks. In recent weeks, the House Ethics Committee has apparently ramped up its inquiry. Scheller, Greenberg's attorney, turned over a trove of documents and said that his client would cooperate. But there is no guarantee that even a damning verdict will have much effect on Gaetz. Both he and Trump have behaved in ways that not so long ago would have led them to be, at the very least, banished from political life. To the annoyance of what they call the liberal media elite, both men have almost seemed to enjoy sidestepping ethical pitfalls. With each new allegation, their voters become more committed. These tactics have taken Trump further than anyone might have imagined when he left office, friendless and defeated in 2021. Gaetz, by his side on the campaign trail, has the air of someone who is just getting started. What you learn is, in politics, it's all the best laid plans of mice and men, he told me. And so I'm trying to do a good job. I like what I'm doing now. I think I'm where I'm supposed to be. Oh, the chaos agent. That gal, that is an excellent article. Oh my God. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Reason, okay, Gal, the reason I don't even know why I didn't contact you and tell you I was going to do it. I figured you'd already read it. But yeah, Gal, this was an amazing article. Thank you so much. And you definitely need to be following Gal. Oh, sorry, looks like chat got a little stuck there. Hold on. And a host of other people, like 5GW Hot Takes and TRCFWTT and Rance Willa and Clayberg. There's a few. But we should do that. But yeah, I wanted to. So Gal had put this article up on Twitter and said, God, I really want people to read this article. And I went, well, I'll read it. So I figure if someone wants to read it, they can read it or listen to it, while they're doing something else. So that's why I do this. But yeah, it's such a massive and complicated story. Yeah, they really did. Yeah, Gal, I agree. That was a really well done article laying out what is a very complicated story. But I do highly suggest that you probably search Gal Suburban and Joel Greenberg, and I think you'll come up with what, thousands, maybe hundreds of threads on Joel Greenberg, maybe thousands. I mean, it really was a massive amount of work. It's a massive amount of work. They interviewed Brian Butte for the article. Yes, we read about that. Yeah, we read the Butte part. Man, Greenberg is such a piece of shit. That's incredible. What an incredible piece of shit he is. So I hope that they do open. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with the ethics. Here's the thing. The line that is so disturbing in this to me, thousands probably, yeah. The line that's so disturbing in this to me is something about, hold on, let me go back down because it's at the bottom. Where is it? Where is it? Down here. Let's see. Where is it? Way at the end. Yeah, there's no guarantee that even a damning verdict will have much effect on Gaetz. Both he and Trump have behaved in ways that not so long ago would have led them to be, at the very least, banished from political life. So here's my stupid hot take. Okay, this is my real stupid hot take. My real stupid hot take is that there will be a time there will be a time, I think, hopefully not in the whoops, oh man, I just want to go back up to the top. I'm so sorry. I'll make this. Let me get us to a I want to get us to a something or other. I want to go back up to that horrible picture. So I think that this story, the story of Matt, see, the thing about it is, here's what I'm observing. It is a great job, Gal. Really, tremendous work. I know you did. I know you had. It's been a crazy few years. I will say that. But what I imagine is going to happen, I believe that this situation with Matt Gaetz, as his trajectory goes up, and he is the the darling of dirty politics, I think his crimes, and even though Greenberg is a jerk, and even though the girls may or may not be good witnesses or remember details that will stand up in a court of law, even though those things may or may not be true, personally, I think someone's trying to spin them that way, but whatever. I think this will be one of the situations that rocks us back from kind of the pendulum swing, so that no, elected officials cannot rape children. Elected officials cannot traffic children for the purposes of raping them. Elected officials cannot engage in a scheme to stop the counting of electoral college votes based on known lies. Like, I think that I hope someday we get the truth behind why the neo-Nazi he brought to the State of the Union finding me and targeting me right at an important time in his invest. That's exactly when it happened. I hope we do too. I have a feeling that's why we have so much trouble, Gal. Not we, but I still feel like he's behind some of that. But I don't know. I can't prove anything. So it doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter what I think. But I'll tell you right now, Gal Suburban is a real smart person. And she really has Matt Gaetz's number in a big way. And she has Joel Greenberg's number and a lot of those guys, especially the ones down in Florida. Because she's the Florida gal. He might be the Florida man, but she's the Florida gal. I think the problem is that I think his district is rigged, so it's kind of hard to get him out of office. But according to Gal, and it makes sense to me, he wants to run for governor of Florida next. So the thing about it is, I think you have to stop him. I think he has to pay for his actual crimes. It can't stay hidden forever. Now, it may come out at a time when we don't get to enjoy it, but I have a feeling this one, he's got a huge ego. Now, he also has Lucky, Ginger Lucky, and all of her money. So he has a lot of money. I do, the other thing just about beyond Matt, it really also begs the question of the actual congressmen who were intimately involved in trying to stop the transfer of power, the coup. I just really think it would be, I guess I'm losing hope that Merrick Garland is willing to go after some of that level, because he thinks somehow that will cause more distress. I don't get it. I don't think that should be a factor. She'll be pregnant soon if she isn't already. Oh yeah, I'm sure they're trying. She's been fat shaming him though. Did you see that? I pointed it out to her. She keeps claiming, "Oh, he looks so good. Look, he used to eat hot dogs and now he just, eats tuna." What worries me is that the people like you and Jim, etc., the truth is out, but it's ignored. Yeah, I feel like that's the thing, Caroline. The truth is out and right in front of us, but it's either dismissed as, oh, that's just political talk, or, oh, stop overreacting. Russia, Russia, Russia. Well, hello. Turns out it's Russia. Um, and it's more than Russia, but it's Russia, and it's time to stop saying it's not Russia. Um, my question is, what about David Weiss? Um, it's all planned out. Governor with X number of kids, run for POTUS with X number of kids. Yeah, he wants Camelot, right? Kathy, I'm with you. I really do. I know that I'll refuse to lose hope in him. I'm just very frustrated. And I don't see where the timing works. You know, I thought by now some of the superseding indictments would have come through and you would have seen people like Roger Stone get yoinked for his role in this. But where's that? Where's that? You're telling me that none of those Proud Boys or Oath Keepers gave up Roger Stone? Are you telling me that? Hey, Kathy, it's not naive. I won't lose hope in justice. I won't, but I'm just like so despondent about why there are so many people like, I mean, and this is dumb because he's not important, but Doug Frank, you know how I feel about Doug Frank, but to this day, that man is going around this country fleecing people using a lie and bullshit data to claim that the election was stolen. And I'm just fucking sick of it. I am fucking sick of it. And I want him, I know his phone was taken by the FBI because he talks about how he came out of the airport in Arizona and he just had pooped his pants or something and he was washing his hands, thank God. And he came out and the FBI were waiting for him and they took his phone. So I want to know what is going on with Doug Frank and any investigation into him. And I don't know what the crime is, but I think defrauding the American public and lying to them and taking their money has to be a crime. And him, Seth Keshel, David Clements, Joe Altman, whoever else are the small time fleecers that, well, Doug not so much, he's a big time fleecer, but so anyway. But it's not even those guys. Like I mean, I can care about those guys. They'll destroy themselves. But I do want some accountability. But I really want accountability for the people like Ron Johnson and Mo Brooks and fucking Mike Lee and fucking Biggs and all of those douche bags. I was gonna call them douche sticks from Arizona and all that. And I want an update. Gal, thank you. Doug Frank, oh my God. Kathy, I would have gone. I would have gone with you. I would have gone. That's something I gotta watch for. I don't think he ever comes to Los Angeles. I should probably look. I haven't looked at his Telegram in a long I haven't gone on Telegram in a long time because frankly, I can't take it. It's too depressing. There is so much hate on those platforms. Not that there isn't a lot of hate on Twitter because there is. I hate that too, but Telegram is just pure hate. It's so depressing. It's at least a conspiracy to charge. I know, right? Aren't they though, Muskie? Somebody's got to be flipping on some of these people. Somebody's got to be flipping on Roger Stone. Somebody's got to be flipping on Steve Bannon. Somebody's got to be flipping on, well, I think Garrett Ziegler's going to get in trouble with this latest thing. What's the latest thing? Oh, the Smirnoff thing. I think Garrett Ziegler's going to get in trouble associated with the Smirnoff thing. Right? Is that the one I was thinking of? Maybe it was another one. But anyway, I don't know. I don't know. And then what I really wanted to show you, well, not what I really wanted to show you, what I really wanted to show you was reading that article. But thank you, Gal, for pointing out that article and saying, you guys got to read this. And I'm like, you know what? She's right. We got to read this. So we read it. Oh, let me get the article and put the link in the chat. Let me put a link. Article link. It's a freebie. There's no paywall. There's no paywall. There's no paywall. Hey, there's no paywall. I don't know why the crown is so fucking big. Okay. Now LA is often on the tour circuit, right? My community. Okay, I have Well, then I'll look. I'll look and see. I just have never seen him come to California, but I could be, well, except for like Northern California. But I'll check and see. Or he goes to somewhere really like in the middle of nowhere, like Lancaster or something. And I'm like, oh my God, that is not Los Angeles. You might think that's Los Angeles, but that's another fucking county. Now you know the Gates is a dangerous one to watch. Yeah. So the moral of this story, kids, is do not trust Matt Gaetz as far as you can throw him. All right? That is really what I want you to take away from all of this. And if you don't know, now you do. And tell your friends. Okay? Just tell your friends. I want to refresh the subscriber goal. Is it? I think it's behind. I don't even get it. All right. Anyway, but now I want to show you the intro video again, and then I'm going to play the outro video, and I'm going to say goodnight to my beautiful friends, and I want to thank Gal Suburban again for offering that. I love the Sizzler. I love Sizzler. Kathy, don't diss Sizzler. I love Sizzler. Okay, here's the intro video. I'm going to play it. Hold on. It's going to take the whole screen. Just don't panic. Okay, I'm still here. Oh, wait, I'll do the music too. Oops. Wait, where's the music? I made it with AI. I'm me and AI, and I just don't bother to change the, I don't want to change the spelling, because frankly, I think it's really fun to have my name misspelled. And I also downloaded new lounge music. This is the new fun music, and I'll play the lounge music for you in a minute. Isn't that cute? That's the intro. I like that it's misspelled. Loons. I think that's funny. Isn't it pretty? Anyway, okay, so that's that one. Hold on, let me get rid of that. And then, oops. And then, oops. And then this is the outro. And then, well, first I want to play you the lounge music. Okay, so this is the new lounge music. You're the first ones to hear it. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready? Wait, let me turn that off. Oops, let me get back here. Wait. I think they're perfect. Hi, Pelosa, please. Woos and loons. It fits. Isn't it fun? I don't even care. I used Canva. They have a built-in AI that you can use. It's not very good, but it's awfully fun. But this is the new lounge music for Friday nights. And then I'll play the outro. Video, which is kind of fun too. Hold on. I think it's big. Okay. Oh, there it is. Oops. Ah! Isn't that cute? Oh, wait. I like it. I wish it would stay. I like the palm trees too. It came up with palm trees. That's pretty cool. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? I loved it. I think it's fun. Anyway, that's how I spent some of my day. Oogs. There was no sound? No. Oh, I forgot. I forgot to do that. Hold on. You didn't hear the music? Okay. Can you hear it now? Count the fingers. Oh no, Caroline! Hit the live. Can you hear the music? Uh-oh. No! You can't? This is the song. Why is it not playing? Oh, wait, hold on, hold on. I know why it's not playing. Hold on. Oh my God, that's why. God dang it. Hold on. I don't know what I'm doing. There you go. Okay, this is the new lounge music. Sorry. Thank you, Oomph. Thank you, Gal. Oomph blues. Can you hear it now? Oh. Wait, can you hear it now? You should hear it now. Did you hear it? I think it might be. Oh, good. You can hear it now. This is the Friday night music. Hi, GP. I got new music. Yeah. So yeah, that's the new music. The new intro outro video is kind of fun. I really like that little picture at the end. Hi, GP. Oh, Caroline, if you go to gal_suburban on Twitter, and I think if you put in a follow request, she'll follow you, I believe. I think. So it's just that her account's protected. But it's still there, gal_suburban. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun. I just had fun with AI today. You know how it goes. And I also was on TikTok today, GP, and I saw some of your beautiful artwork. You're really doing some great stuff with collages and with music and stuff. So congratulations. I absolutely love it. So follow GP. Also, GP has a YouTube channel with some beautiful artwork on it. So highly recommend. Hi. Oh my gosh, everybody's here. You guys are awesome. All right, well, again, thank you so much for coming. Wanted to read that one document. I am going to be live tomorrow with some CPAC stuff. I don't think I start until a little later in the morning and in the early afternoon for the people on the East Coast, etc. But I'm going to start with some of the CPAC stuff, but then I have other things lined up for us to read through. So lots of stuff in the next few days, every day. Every day. And make sure you vote on the next book that we're going to read, because I want to start that maybe tomorrow night if we get a decision. So anyway, thank you. Oh, of course. Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. It really is. It's really quite stunning, and I am a fan of the colors. So congratulations. You're doing amazing work. And I encourage everyone to expose all of their art because art is everywhere. Hashtag. Have a great night. Get some good sleep. Have sweet dreams. And I will see you bright and not so early in the morning. All right? Let's take it out with that video. Oops. No, we won't.